Yesterday, Bethesda released another episode of Into the Starfield. This one focuses on the sound design and music of Starfield.
I always say that the music is the fourth dimension. It is the emotional dimension. And so in order to create this, you have to ask these questions. Where are you going? What's your motivation? What is your story? What is really pushing us? This is what really drove me more than anything else. These huge questions, they're as big as space.
Composer Inon Zur started out by talking about the things that he thinks of when he's composing the music for Starfield. Inon is joined by audio director Mark Lambert in this behind-the-scenes conversation of the sound of Starfield.
Everything I've worked on at this studio, the music started very early on, as early as the concept art for the game, from when I began here in 2005. At that time, Oblivion was already well underway. But as we went on to Fallout 3 after that, that was one of the first things I worked on music-wise was the main theme. And that's always been the case, where the main theme sets the tone for everything else we do in the game. And there's time throughout the entire project for that to evolve.
That's true. And I remember during the Fallout 4 visit, which was actually in 2012, I was wandering through the corridors and I basically stumbled into the artist's room. And it was the first time I actually saw them do what they're doing. I was captivated. I was like, wow, this is really what it is all about. And I felt so inspired and motivated basically to go back and, to do the same thing with the palette of music. The biggest challenge is actually creating the signature.
I relax a lot once
Exactly.
we feel good about the main theme, because the rest is it'll be work and iteration, but it's going to write itself.
Mark talked about how the main theme sets the tone for the entire game. It was also nice to hear them both speak about their history with Bethesda. They both had some interesting takes on how the sound affects the game.
The way I looked at Starfield always is what I call the sanctified triplet, which is everything is streaming, right? Everything is changing and everything is returning back. Ta-da, ta-da, here's your development. And then ta-da, and back. So basically it presents itself, it develops, it goes back.
The circular.
Is exactly some sort of like a circular journey.
You go out, you adventure, discover, return.
Yes, there's always the strive to go back home. And that's, I guess that's what feels so complete for us, right? We want to complete the mission. We want to complete our journey. We will find something, we will discover something, we'll take it with us, and we will go back home with it. When we built the traditional orchestral sound palette, we actually really divided the orchestral group. For example, took the woodwinds, okay? And we created like a whole woodwind layer that almost represents particle in space, because they don't play melodies at all. They play sort of like a high frequency sequence, like together. So they almost don't sound like woodwind. They sound something between organic to synthetic. Then the strings, they will play this long chords or long melodies and long crescendos and diminuendos. And these kind of things along the line with the fast-moving woodwinds will create a nice blanket around these waves, okay? And then comes the brass. And the brass, especially the French horns, playing sort of like the beacon, the call of the brass.
Inon spoke about how he came up with the musical score for Starfield. It was an interesting take on how he sees the game as exploration and then returning home. The design for the score is particularly interesting to me because, for me, all music boils down to the sound. I love hearing multiple instruments in concert with each other.
Those instrument groups as well. A lot of times when you are looking at that whole main theme, I'm kind of salivating thinking about what can I do with that on the sound design side, not just to weave the main theme into different key points in the game, leveling up, discovering new places. Could we use that as straight up sound design to take those woodwind tremolos and just let's slow them way down, let's reverse them. I'll take any of that music and turn it into ambience somewhere. The music is like the companion. It's the companion to the player in the single-player game. We don't have control over how the player chooses to experience the game. Our sense of scale had to be totally readjusted in making a game on a planetary surface as we've always done before, and now where you have these very vast distances against this black, starry background. It is a blank canvas and a massive playground, and all the pieces are there for you to write your own story. Whether you jump right in and you wish to follow the main quest, the main story, and go to the obvious one point leads to another, leads to another. The music has a funny way of playing the right chord change at the right time, and a lot of that just happens at random. You look over the valley at just the right moment, and that just happens to be when this one chord change happens, and there are times like that that feel scripted, and they're not. And I like that each player has that experience for themselves personally.
I believe that the game is a whole experience, and music is part of the whole experience. I believe that the best music in a game is a music that you don't hear, music that you feel. This is something that is bigger than us. I mean, so many people worked on this game. And so my wish is that specifically the music will be present in a way that is going to magnify the entire experience.
Mark explained how he uses the score in ambient sounds by altering it in various ways. He also spoke about how the music is random, but it feels scripted even though it's not. He also said something that really stood out to me. He confirmed what I have suspected for some time now, that being the ability to explore not only on planets, but also in space. This is huge for a Bethesda game. We have never before been able to do something like that on this larger scale, and I am excited to see it in action. Enon also chimed in by explaining that he believes the game is a whole experience and that the music is part of that. He also said that the best music is the music you don't hear, but you feel it. I have to agree with Enon here. The most impactful music is the music you feel or that invokes a feeling. Imagine playing a game with the sound off completely. Most people would lose interest very quickly. This can even be said with movies and TV. Without the musical score playing in the background, so much of the experience is lost. I love all the music I have heard so far for Starfield, and I can't wait to play it and experience the game for the first time. It was also nice to see all the new concept art in this episode because those also paint a picture for what to expect in the game. With all of that being said, this episode comes to a close. If you have enjoyed this episode, give a like, subscribe if you still haven't, and share this with your friends. It really helps the channel, and I appreciate you all. As always, I'm just glad you stopped by, and I'll see you in the next one.